Labeling theory, a constructionist theory. Contents: definition, history, authors, major tenets, applications, examples, consequences, critiques, references. Definition: labeling theory analyzes how social groups create and apply definitions for deviant behavior. The approach examines how deviant labels emerge, how some social groups develop the power to impose deviant labels onto selected others, and the consequences of being labeled deviant. History. The idea of labeling theory flourished in American sociology during the 1960s, thanks in large part to sociologist Howard Becker. However, its core ideas can be traced back to the work of founding French sociologist Émile Durkheim. American sociologist George Herbert Mead's theory framing social construction of the self as a process involving interactions with others also influenced its development. Scholars Frank Tannenbaum, Edwin Lemert, Albert Memmi, Irving Goffman, and David Matza played roles in the development and research of labeling theory as well. Authors: Howard Becker. Sociologist Howard Becker is credited with the most influential formulation of labeling theory, which appears in his book Outsiders, published in 1973. According to Becker, deviance is not an intrinsic feature of behavior. Acts and individuals are not inherently deviant until some social groups can successfully define them that way. Labeling theory here builds from the symbolic interactionist tenet that people define and construct their identities from society's perceptions of them. Major tenets. Rooted in symbolic interaction, labeling theory asks: 1. Who applied the deviant label to whom? In symbolic interaction terms, who interprets whose behavior as deviant? And 2. What consequences does the application of this label have for the person labeled and for the people who apply the label? In symbolic interaction terms, how does this interpretation affect the behavior of both parties involved in the interaction? Who applies the deviant label to whom? According to labeling theorists, people who represent the forces of law and order as well as conventional morality typically apply the deviant label to those who have allegedly violated that law and morality. Applications, examples. Labelers. Generally, the rich, white, or powerful and their representatives, such as law enforcing agents, are more able to label others as deviant. Examples include police, judges, prison guards, psychiatrists, mental hospital attendants, and other social control agents. Labeled. On the other side of that same coin, the poor, black, or powerless are more likely to be labeled deviant. Examples include criminals, juvenile delinquents, drug addicts, mental patients, and prostitutes. Consequences. For the labeler, labeling a person deviant tends to create positive consequences for the community that applies the label. One consequence is enhanced social order. For the labeled, being labeled deviant can produce negative consequences for the individual so labeled. Once people are labeled deviant, they are more likely to see themselves as deviant, which in turn leads them to continue the so-called deviant behavior. Critiques. First, sociologists have criticized labeling theory for not being able to answer the question of what causes deviance in the first place, even though labeling theory is not meant to make the explanation. Second, research has failed to produce consistent support to labeling theorist assumption that the deviant label leads the individual into further deviant involvement. And third, The more extreme forms of labeling theory cannot logically deal with hidden deviants and powerful deviants. References. The list below consists of the sources that I used to produce this PowerPoint. Thank you.